Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. Terminator Genisys. Now, I know a lot of people aren't into the Terminator series, but honestly, it has to be the most accurate depiction of what was to come that I could see anywhere in any of the film decodes that I've done. The entire franchise basically talks about a global network, a global system of control, and that requires network interfaces, as well as just a global internet, and as well as communication systems. So this fits in perfectly with 5G whiz. And this film, let's take a look at some of the specs on this film. This film came out in 2015, the Terminator Genisys film, and it actually made 4 times its budget, which is pretty huge. You know, it's really difficult for these kinds of films to make money compared to, like, the only thing I can think of in terms of a modern day example of the profitability of a film would be like the DC, the Marvel Universe, and all that. But typically it's very difficult for films to be this profitable. So this was a pretty big deal back in the day. Looks like it cost like 155 million and grossed 440 at the box office. So these are the kinds of films that we like to look at because they're seen by the most people. And so once we can decode them, we have to decode them because the people that go watch these films are being programmed, right? That's why we look at these films. So we have to unprogram people from the program. Now, this Terminator movie is basically an alternate timeline in which John Connor gets infected with this programmable matter, which the matter, what it does is it merges man with machine. Now, in this timeline, Sarah Connor, you can see her here, she's much more savvy and battle equipped, and she basically hooks up with Kyle Reese, just like in the first Terminator film, but this time she's much more ready for the fight. Why? Because the timeline was altered, and a Terminator was sent back to protect her as a little girl, so she was basically raised by a Terminator. And so in the film, and you're going to see this as when I show you these clips, she basically builds her own time machine to try to go to the future to kill Skynet. Now there's this odd aspect to the plot that I think most people missed. Sarah Connor is played by the Dragon Queen from Game of Thrones, Emilia Clarke. Now, those of you that are Game of Thrones fans probably barely recognize her. She doesn't look the same. So why are we bringing this up? Well, the dragon, of course, is the Ouroboros, which is time. And the whole Terminator series was about time, wasn't it? Time travel. Now, the film follows a 33-year period between 1984 and 2017. And we had discovered in a previous decode that there were 33 steps in this pyramid. Remember that decode we did last week? This is the Skynet logo pyramid, and there are apparently 33 steps. Now, that's if you count each of these red steps here and then start counting again at the bottom of the diamond. It'll bring you to 33 total steps, which I believe was the intention. Okay, because there's 17 on this side and 17 on this side. So it would make sense that they were really talking about 2017, 33 years after the original film came out in 1984. Now, the implications of this are stunning because 1984 has always been the year that's represented the total loss of people's freedoms, like the book by George Orwell. Now, as we go through this decode, you'll begin to realize that Skynet really is 5G whiz, and we'll see that play out later on in the plot. But let's take a closer look at some of these clips from the film.
For our children's children, so they will not carry these marks.
Let me turn the volume up for you guys a little bit because I think that's probably a little low. So there's John Connor, and he talks about we're doing this for our children's children so they will not have to carry these marks. So what's this scene about? Well, John Connor leads the rebels into Skynet, and it's his last and final push to defeat the machines. But before he does, before he's able to, defeat the machines, they send through the time machine Arnold Schwarzenegger, the Terminator, so that he can kill John's mother before he could be born. So John is bearing the mark. And this is all we've been talking about lately, right? And it's interesting because we get into these, technical discussions about it. And some people believe it's the mark. Some people believe it's the precursor to the mark. But at the end of the day, there will be a physical mark on your hand or your forehead. They're already basically talking about the barcode already in terms of and linking it to the Pokemon sticker. So that's the beginning. And as soon as that is picked up worldwide, and they'll say it's an issue of safety, public health. As soon as that's picked up worldwide and they require this proof on your phone, and then they'll say, hey, we'll just make it easier. It's required anyway. So why don't we just put a tattoo on your right hand or your forehead? And that will be the final mark. So everything leading up to that obviously would be a precursor. Now that's my personal feeling. Some people believe we've already received the mark if you got the Pokemon sticker, and I just don't believe that. I don't believe that 100 million Christians in America are now condemned because they got tricked by Thump. I just don't believe that that's the case. God has mercy, and I'm not telling you to go out and get it, obviously. Do not. I wouldn't. But, maybe as time goes on, God will use this as a learning opportunity for people to be able to wake up, and people will be able to say, wow, look at what's happened. This is never going to end. And even though I got the first one, maybe now I can not stop myself from getting the mark, right? And this is the way I think it's going to play out. It's God allowing people time to realize the deception. And look, I could be wrong. I don't know, but does it really matter? If you're going to get the sticker or not, you've already decided that in your mind, right? So does it really matter if the sticker is the mark? I don't think it really matters, other than now you can start to grieve for family and friends and that already got the Pokemon sticker. Okay. And that would be a very dark and sad world for us to be living in right now if we knew that that was the case beyond the shadow of a doubt. So just be careful, because there are YouTube channels that will say things for sensationalism. And if they're the only person saying it, then they get lots of views and clicks and this and that. And because they're saying something very profound. And I've seen the same thing happen with, rapture dates. I've been on here for almost 10 years on YouTube, and I've seen 100 rapture dates come and go. And I've heard channels say beyond the shadow of a doubt that they knew for a matter of fact that this is going to be the rapture because of the coding and the gematria and then everything else. And then it didn't happen. And then what happens is people forget about the claims, and then they keep believing the lies moving forward. So just be wary, okay? That's all I'm telling you. And stand your ground. We've already made our choice what we're going to do. So now all that's in question is a judgment of the people that already got the sticker. Are they condemned or are they not? And that's not our place to judge that. That's God's place to judge that. So understand that there are psyops afoot even in our truth community to continue to divide the community, to continue to have people pointing fingers at each other and claiming that channel's a shill and this one isn't, because they're not coming out and saying this or that or this, right? So that's just of the enemy. That's division, trying to, make you, get confused and hopeless and all those things. You already know in your heart the decision that you're going to make. And that's the point I wanted to make today. And hopefully, people see enough of these decodes to understand that they will be making the same decision that we've made, right? And that's about all we can hope to do at this point, and tell them that it could possibly be the mark, okay? Now, that's okay to say, I would think. But to say, oh, if you don't say for a matter of fact, then you're a liar. So let's continue on, because John speaks about this mark, and later in the film, he gets another mark. And this is interesting because two marks, right? A mark, and they're both from the machines. Let's watch this. Now, here's the time machine, and it looks like a lens or a ring. Now, what I want you to notice about this is that rings are also crowns, aren't they? But here's what's important to note, is that this ring or crown is housed inside the center of the shape of a magnetic field, also known as a torus field, or some people refer to it as an apple core. Let me show you some pictures of this here. And so you can see this. This is the toroidal field. It's a magnetic field. It's the general shape of a magnetic field. And in fact, it has the basic shape of a tree with a crown and roots below, above and below. It's also the basic shape of all fruit. Has this toroidal field built into it because the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, does it? So there's something to this. And this is why I believe that this is the actual fruit that Eve ate in the garden. In other words, she went through a time machine, or humanity went through a time machine. Obviously, we're descended from Adam and Eve. And it was a tree into a dimension of linear time. And that's why we have linear time. We die. God said, you will surely die. How did he know that? Because we entered another law of physics, another frame of reality. Now, you're going to hear this repeated in another decode I'm doing on Wednesday. They actually say this almost exactly verbatim how I said this. Why? Because we've said this before. Different laws of physics. And the decode that we're going to talk about that in is called Archive 81. It's a brand new Netflix series. And they say verbatim that there are different dimensions of reality with different laws of physics. So where do you think they got that concept from? Obviously, we're starting to talk about things that they are now having to disclose. And so they're rushing to disclose these things in these films because they realize the truth is coming out and that now all of this begins to make perfect sense. Eve did not eat a literal fruit. She basically had a magnetic field that interfered with another magnetic field, nullifying it and drawing her into another dimension, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And God knew she would surely die because she entered a linear timeline where sin causes death. She went through a portal, and this is the portal that the devil has been trying over and over again here on earth to remanufacture throughout the ages. He just had to wait until the end of the timeline, until he could bring humanity to a certain level of technology so that he could have this thing built, and so he could try to escape the time prison and elevate himself above the Most High by getting out of the time prison. And that's what I believe all this really means in the Bible. Now, all of these films are meant to evoke sympathy for the devil. That's what they're designed to do. And that's why we decode them, because if we don't, then the magic in these films makes you want to doubt God. That's the whole design of it from start to finish. Even films that seem to show love for God are tainted with seeds of doubt. And this is the entire, purpose of these films. Okay. So now you see why this ring could also be a crown, because trees have crowns, don't they? And this ring is just beneath where the crown would be in this magnetic field. Let's keep watching this here.
It's the first tactical time weapon. Skynet just used it.
Go to San Francisco 2017. You can kill Skynet before it's born.
You can kill Skynet before it's born.
Now you can see why the Genisys part of this, and you can see how this fits in, right? Because the Genesis is the book in the Bible that talks about the tree from the garden. And so now it makes perfect sense. Now this boy is going to talk about Genisys being Skynet.
Skynet is Genisys. It comes online October 2017.
Remember, Genisys is Skynet.
Now this, of course, is the time machine that they're working on to get out of the firmament. And guess who are the batteries that power it? That's all of us. And this is why they need to mix us with metals in order to turn us into fully operational batteries that they can then draw off our energy through the 5G Wiz network and power their time machine to try to pop through the firmament. Now, this element of killing Skynet before it's born is basically the revenge of God and the Most High, because the enemy sent back his Terminators in the timeline and to try to kill Jesus before he was born. And in actuality, remember, the king during Jesus' birth came back to try to kill all of the firstborn children. But do you think that they would have thought twice about taking out, Jesus' mother, Mary and Joseph? Of course he would have. So how did the enemy know that Jesus would be born? How did the king of that time know to look for Jesus, the child? How did they know? Because the prophecy said. So in effect, it's a form of time travel. I'm not saying that they went back in time from this present moment, but they basically went before they knew Jesus would be born to try to find the seed of the woman, to crush the seed of the woman. You see how this works? Now, of course, Jesus crushed the serpent at the cross, right? The nail in his foot was his foot or heel being crushed, but through his sacrifice, he has crushed the head of the serpent. Now, here we are at the end of the timeline, and I truly believe we are at the end of the timeline. And basically, God will crush Skynet before it's born, okay? Because what will happen is there will be no flesh left had he not cut those days short or cut the timeline short. You see how all this is starting to fit together now? And it all goes back to biblical prophecy. And so God will cut the days short because the enemy is going to try to elevate himself above the Most High and escape the firmament. Now let's keep reading here and look at this here.
When Genisys comes online, Judgment Day begins.
When it does, Judgment Day happens.
So you're remembering the future?
There's the Dragon Queen right there.
Just make sure you show up.
Now, let's keep going with this. So now we had discovered a long time ago that time machines have lots of copper. Remember that? We looked at some of the old time machine movies, didn't we? And we saw that in some of the other films, more subtly, there were phone booths, which are full of copper coins and copper telephone lines. And these characters that are involved in these movies, where they go into these telephone booths, they usually cross dimensions, don't they? We saw it in Superman. Superman goes into a telephone booth, and of course he could turn back time by flying around the earth backwards. Remember, we saw it in the Matrix films, telephone booth. Doctor Who, for you, those of you that live in the UK, all of this has already been disclosed. So basically, Kyle and Sarah go to the future. This is like a Back to the Future element of the franchise here. And they go 33 years to try and kill Skynet. Now, we all know the implications of 33. I don't need to repeat all that all over again. And who, basically came up with this number and talks about it all the time, Skull and Bones and all of that stuff. But let's keep watching here, because this isn't the only time we're going to see copper in this time machine. Here's another scene here.
I don't want to have to steal someone's pants again.
I have the coordinates in San Francisco.
So there's the money, of course, and one Terminator hits the other Terminator with a telescope full of coins. So there is your lens, which is telescopes have lenses in them, and your copper coins, right? This is the time machine aspect. So that little scene right there was reinforcing this concept of exactly how this copper time machine was made. Now I'm gonna disclose to you by the end of the show exactly what this copper time machine is and what I think it is in our modern day. Let's keep watching. Now here you see the 33 years on display here on this billboard, and of course 111119, because this is very important. Something about this number 19 is very important to these people, and this is why Blind 11 was 19 years before Vidco 19. And I believe all of this is linked very closely into 5G Whiz, and Vidco 19, I believe, is linked into it as well. Now, I'm not exactly sure how the two are linked, and there are theories out there which are probably very believable and could be the case that are being talked about in the truth community. But I always wait on the Holy Spirit to gather as much evidence as possible before I start ringing the alarm bells. But my gut is telling me that these people are right. And then when the time comes, we'll dig into this more and look at the links and connections between G-Wiz and Vidco. Let's keep watching.
Hey, I've been working this case for 33 years.
What do you want? A medal?
Hey.
So there's the 33 years, of course, and just like the 33 steps on the Skynet pyramid. So it was all foretold and prophesied and foreshadowed in these satanic films. Now, here's the thing. There's more to this Skynet logo than meets the eye. Okay. And I'm going to break it down for you right now. This is the womb symbol. This is the Skynet logo here, and it's actually the womb symbol. And it also appears in the flux capacitor from Back to the Future. And this is where the war with the woman comes in. This is where the to get her comes in. Together. How? Well, this is the war on the flesh, right? So, the war on natural birth. Both films have time travel elements, and both films have the womb capacitor shape. And so that confirms it. Let's keep watching.
Everything in my life uploaded and online 24/7.
So what you're about to hear here is their discussion of the Internet of Things that has been already exposed in the truth community. Everything connected into one, which is what allows Skynet to judge humanity. Once Skynet becomes all-knowing and all-seeing, then it believes that it can judge humanity. And they even connect Skynet into the military. Keep listening and watching.
Totally connected.
Connected to what?
Genisys is an operating system? What's it do?
Genisys does everything. My phone will link to my tablet, will link to my computer, will link to my car.
Credit card, not even a goddamn student ID.
So?
So that's impossible. But somehow you've gone so far off the grid that you don't even exist.
You two have a lot to explain. Starting with who you are. Nobody in our database matches your prints. No facial recognition hits for driver's license, passport, social media accounts.
Genisys isn't just for consumers. Its integration into our military is leading some to ask whether our reliance on machines could go too far.
Look, Genisys is more than an operating system. It's more than a lifestyle tool. It's the future.
Plugged in, logged on, all the time. We can't live without it.
Genisys is a Trojan horse. How did you find us?
Someone filmed you on the freeway with one of these.
They all have them.
This is the world now.
Skynet's way into everything.
And these people are inviting their own extinction in through the front door and they don't even know it.
So we're the ones who are building our own prisons. And I've tried to explain this to people before, that all these jobs, these engineering, IT, computers, we're the ones that are building the very prison. And the architect is Satan. He's the one that came up with this business model so he could finally infiltrate all of the minds of the world and also imprison us electronically. And that brings us to the infection aspect to the film. And here you see John Connor is literally infected with this matter, which causes him to merge with the machine. Now later you're going to hear the Terminator, you're going to hear Arnold Schwarzenegger explain how this infection works. He explains that there's no cure. Watch.
I'm offering us a future Together. Together. Together.
It's all about to get her. So the beast gets the woman, he gets her, and then he merges her with him together. In fact, the word together probably came out of the root words of to get her. I mean, I'm firmly convinced at this point that this is probably the case. So let's keep listening here.
Together. A family.
If we refuse? At the end of the war, Skynet was trying to develop a new type of infiltration unit by infecting human subjects with machine-faced matter.
By infecting human subjects with machine-faced matter. Okay? So he just explained it right there. Now, or machine-based matter, I'm sorry. So this is the programmable matter, obviously. Now, let's get into John Connor and his infected new, entity or whatever. And here's the thing. His weakness is the magnetic field. Basically, an opposing magnetic field can disrupt John's magnetic field. So remember I told you that we were in a prison, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil? Well, some people would argue that we are in a combined tree. So the tree of the knowledge of good and evil could be two magnetic fields interfering with each other, okay, and creating a prison that we can't get out of. Now, I would love to see some, physics papers on this, and maybe we'll dig around on the internet and see if we can find any experiments that they've done where they've tried to combine two magnetic fields or held two magnetic fields in close proximity to one another. And this would be the two pillars, right? The two pillars. And this is why, the Skull and Bones and all these societies have the two pillars, because maybe it represents the two magnetic fields that are in close proximity to one another, the two trees. So humanity went through a portal and was trapped in this tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And they visually represent that here when John is trapped in the magnetic field, because he has his own magnetic field. And then there's this MRI machine behind him, which creates a strong magnetic field. And he is trapped against it. And it's crazy because they even show this spinning of the magnetic field like an Ouroboros. So now you understand how the Dragon Queen fits into the role that she was typecast into this film. Spinning around.
Holding for long. Come on.
So you just saw the spinning magnetic field. That's the Ouroboros.
Matter coheres using a magnetic field.
Come on.
Matter coheres using a magnetic field. Disrupting that field may trap him, but the experiments failed. The human subjects went insane and died. It restructures and rebuilds human tissue on a cellular level for maximum combat utility.
So the mixing of steel with watery clay, but the Bible says in Daniel that the two shall not cleave, even though they shall try to mingle themselves with the seed of men. Now you're probably chomping out the bit and wondering, what is this magnetic field here on Earth that the devil's trying to use as a weapon to get out of the firmament? What is this time machine device? Well, I believe that it's CERN. CERN is full of copper. It spins. It creates a magnetic field. It's connected to 5G Wiz. And I believe it's their time machine to try to break through this dimension. In fact, when they spin particles around this thing at super fast speeds, they say that if you were to attach an atomic clock to these particles, that they would come back in a different phased out timeline than our current timeline. They've done experiments on this by flying airplanes at supersonic speeds with an atomic clock in them. And when the plane lands, the person is out of phase with our current timeline. The clocks read different times. Now, what would happen if that timeline was out of phase by hours or days? Would that put a person outside of this timeline? Would they actually be able to be outside of this magnetic prison. And I believe that these are the experiments that they're running. This is what the devil's trying to do. Now, you and I as believers would never want to do that because we don't know what's on the other side. We could end up in some dark, evil tree of hell or Sheol. And I believe that even these places that the Bible discusses are trees. There are other frames of reality, like hell and Sheol and these places. I believe they're just other trees of the garden where that he can lock these, these fallen angels and stuff into that they can't get out of, you see? So there's something going on here, right? Now, the Bible says that they will attempt this, but they shall not cleave, of course, as we read at the bottom, as they try to mix steel with watery clay or iron with watery clay so that they can use humanity as the batteries to fuel this huge machine. So I think we finally figured it out, because you need metal in a human in order to draw their magnetic field into the mainframe. Let's keep watching.
Right, but if he can be cured.
Negative. His body was replaced on a cellular level. There is no cure.
There is no cure. His body's been replaced on a cellular level. Now, in this next scene, John helps his human workers build the very device that he will use to travel back in time to kill Sarah Connor. So we, the humans, are the ones that are building our own prisons. We're building the vampiric infrastructure as well.
Time travel.
And when do we want it?
It's irrelevant. Yeah. We're years away from making this thing work. But when we do...
We are creating the dawn of a new age.
The dawn of a new age. Now, we'll get to that part in a second, but how is this device going to work? Well, I believe it lowers the veil so that demons can come through and commune with humans. And so when they fire this thing up, there's probably some secret room they all go down into, and they can see images, they can see ghosts, probably orbs and all kinds of crazy stuff, because they are getting close to piercing through the veil, or they are piercing through the veil. And so that's what's driving them to continue to sink billions and billions of dollars into this technology, to keep seeing how fast that they can get these particles to spin, to see how much of a magnetic field they can create, and so on and so forth, so that they can communicate with these entities and also be possessed by these entities as well. You'll notice that it was right around the electronic revolution, right around the presidency of Abraham Lincoln, that I believe that these demons were able to start possessing presidents. And this is why all of the presidents, or all, the modern presidents, continue to talk about Lincoln over and over and over again. And what many people don't know is Lincoln held seances right there in the White House. What do you think they were doing at these seances? They were inviting demons into themselves to gain powers and things. And right at that time is when the largest copper line was placed underneath the Atlantic Ocean, connecting Europe and America. It was the first telegraph line. We're talking lots and lots and lots of copper. And maybe this is why they put Lincoln on the copper penny, because these were the beginnings of technology that they had invented, that they could use these machines to possess themselves, basically. These time machines that they begin to call them. So they were able to use these magnetic fields to interfere with the prison magnetic field in an attempt to cancel it out or break through it. Now, they know it partially works because spirits were able to come through and communicate with them. So they knew they were on to something. And they think that if they can make this thing stronger, that it will eventually be able to poke a hole through and escape. And that would elevate the devil above the Most High, which we know won't happen, but the Bible says he will try. And this is what we're witnessing right now with all of this. See how it all makes sense now? Now, let me back this up a minute, because they talk about the dawn of a new age. Let me play this back for you.
Yeah. We're years away from making this thing work. But when we do...
We are creating the dawn of a new age, where every single piece of technology you own will be seamlessly linked.
Now, what is this dawn of the new age? Well, we already know the bringer of the dawn is linked into Apollo. We already know that, right? And this was spoken of by a young girl at Bo Jiven's Eggnog the Nation speech. Remember? She talked about a dawn of a new age. Well, what was she really talking about? Well, by dawn was simply a newer version of New Dawn. Dawn Thump. They basically all have the same agenda. Nothing's changed. We're still going 5G whiz and beyond. So nothing's changed. Everything else is just smoke and mirrors and right-left paradigm. And also they also have the same agenda when it comes to Pokemon stickers. They've all revealed themselves for who they are. So nothing's really changed. It would have been the same under Thump. They just nuance it and massage it to make it more palatable to certain people at different times. But the end goal is as many people as possible to get a sticker to turn on 5G whiz and beyond. And that is shared by both presidents, and it has been since Lincoln. This rush to electrify the world, the electric kingdom, and they use the right-left paradigm to pretend as though we are competing against these other countries for superiority, and through our own ego, we believe that they are correct and justified in this race, in this competition. Do you see how all of this comes out of greed? All of it comes out of fear, insecurity. Whereas if we just had faith in the Most High, then things wouldn't be so crazy. Look at the Amish, you guys. They have rejected the electric kingdom. Why do you think that is? Because they know the agenda. They know it. Now, if you don't believe me, watch this next scene, because Arnold basically is Thump in this next scene. Watch. What you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come? And there you see he's 6 foot 6 inches tall. That's Thump's number, 66. Thump was born on the 166th day of the year in leap years, which was the year he was elected was a leap year. So in the year that he was elected, he was born on the 166th day of the year. And now you understand the connection to his 66th floor penthouse, because he already knew he would be elected president in 2016 in a leap year. He already knew that. How? Because he has a time machine too. Remember in this movie Genisys, it was Arnold / Thump who builds the simpler version of the time machine to travel to 2017 to kill Skynet, remember? Well, I believe we figured it out. Reading between the lines, looking at the symbolism. Bad boys, what you gonna do? So there it is. This is why it's so important. Now you understand the Tesla aspect to all this. John Thump, now you get it. They were working on a machine, a rudimentary time machine, to commune with these spirits, to be possessed by them, and to try to break through the firmament. And there it is right there, his birthday, the 166th day of the year. Now you know why he's on the 66th floor penthouse. He knew he'd be elected in the leap year. Now, I wish I was making all this up, but I truly believe that the revelations on this channel are an inspiration of the Holy Spirit. You can choose whether or not to believe them. You can pray to God that he reveals the truth to you, to ask him if Casey is correct in what I'm showing you. But there's something going on here, as I just demonstrated. And now you're going to be able to understand this Terminator 3 clip, because it's going to tie it all in together for you. Watch this.
The virus is infected.
Wait, let me turn the volume down on this one. I think this one's a little bit louder. Okay, that's probably better. Probably blast you guys' ears out.
Skynet is the virus. It's the reason everything's falling apart. The virus is infected. Skynet is the virus. It's the reason everything's falling apart.
Skynet is the virus. It is the reason why everything's falling apart. And many of you will remember Terminator 3, that Basically, Skynet sent out a virus so that they could turn Skynet on. And now you understand the modern day connection to all of this. The cure is the virus. How do we know? Because Apollo had the cure, but he also created the virus, didn't he? He required sacrifice in order to achieve that cure or to receive the cure.
We have to shut down Skynet. Where's the system core?
In 1 hour, it will initiate a massive nuclear attack on its enemy.
What enemy? Us! Humans!
Skynet has become self-aware.
You need a plane. The particle accelerator leads to the runway.
The particle accelerator leads to the runway.
Take care of my daughter.
What are you doing?
So John Connor turns the particle accelerator on.
Powering up.
They run into it, so they become the particles, right? And here we have another magnetic field in this Terminator with this opposing magnetic field in proximity to it, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And that's it. So that's what I've been up to for the last 3 days. Now, I've also got a lot of other films already decoded. I'm just waiting to present them to you guys. So if you're new to the channel, please subscribe. Make sure you come on here and, get caught up, because this is a learning process for all of us. We all work together to find this stuff and to connect the dots. And sometimes it takes us a while. But basically what you're seeing is basically 8 hours of work every single day that I condense down into, just a few dozen minutes. So, like 30 minutes to 45 minutes is usually the length of our show. Sometimes we'll go for an hour, but this is a result of 8 hours of work, editing, decoding, everything. Now, tomorrow we will look at a crude comedy show or comedy movie called The Brothers Grimsby. And you will be shocked. Thump actually makes a cameo appearance. He actually contracts AIDS while he's sitting in the bleachers of a football game just after a pathogen is almost released over the entire crowd. The pathogen was almost released by 2 booster rockets. Can't make it up, you guys. Grimsby, this movie released before he got elected and before the world was exposed to VidCo-19. And I forgot to mention that as he's sitting in the bleachers, there is presidential music playing, even though he hadn't been elected yet. So you do the math on that. How did they know? Now, in the movie, I don't want to give too much of tomorrow's decode away, but basically in the movie, The Brothers Grimsby, the pathogen is meant to take out all of the useless eaters. And they are very descriptive in making fun of the people who live off the system, who have nothing to offer them. Now, understand that when they talk about useless eaters and having nothing to offer them, what they're talking about is all the people that don't play ball in their agenda to help build our own prisons, to help build the technologies that the devil wants to use to try to break through the firmament. That's what they're talking about in terms of useless eaters. Understand that we are not the ones to blame for the positions that we've been put in. You know how hard it is to find a job making more than $15 an hour these days, which gets you almost nothing. You can't live on your own in most cities in America on that amount of money. We didn't create that system. They created the system. So they created the useless eaters. They created the people dependent on the medical system and all the other things. They're the ones that did that. We are like the victims of that. So here we have a troll. Well, that's your opinion. But we all know who wins in the end. God wins, doesn't he? And his son. And he had the perfect plan that could not be brought to ruin. And his new kingdom will be the kingdom of all kingdoms. So I love each and every one of you guys. And thanks everybody for showing up. And we will see you guys tomorrow. Take care and be safe, you guys.